Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hi. Usually I ask you, how's it going? But for us, this weekend was finally a weekend where it was not bitingly cold out. It was not like sub-zero temperatures, which it has been like all last week.
Mm-hmm.
The Arctic air has finally sort of moved on a little bit. So we did get outside. And we have a friend who is like way into geocaching, to the point where he's got custom caches. He has minted his own geocaching coin. Yeah, he's like, this is way into it. So he loves it though. It gets him out, and like he wouldn't otherwise necessarily get outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a great kind of hobby for him. So we are in full support of it. But we like to go with them sometimes, and with the kids, they really enjoy it too. So in Minnesota, the lakes freeze over in deep winter. And so there are geocaches on the islands in the middle of lakes. And so we went to some islands nearby us, walked out on the lake, had a lot of fun. It was great. And the kids really enjoyed bringing their sleds along and just like skating on the ice basically with their sleds.
That ice that's probably a couple feet deep.
Yeah.
Of ice because of how cold it's been.
Yes. So we didn't have any worries about that. Early in the season, he did venture out onto the lake, and you could kind of hear there was sometimes it was not fully frozen in a few places. So like in a pond or whatever, we had tried going, and sure enough, it was not ready yet. But this past week, it's been so cold that it's definitely fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're pretty good about safety there. Like if there's thin ice, the local, Parks and Rec, I imagine.
Yeah.
The local authorities are pretty good about marking lakes that are dangerous.
Yep. And if you've never like seen this before, like if you're not from Minnesota or not from like a place where the lakes freeze over, people will drive their pickup trucks onto these lakes. And they'll do ice fishing. They'll bring out their ice houses, things like that. So it's pretty hardcore, I would say.
Yeah. There's like if you ever watched Grumpy Old Men, extremely accurate movie with regards to the amount of infrastructure that people build on top of the ice in the middle of a frozen lake. Like that's exactly what happens. There's like a whole town that people construct sometimes.
Yep.
Full of fishermen or whatever else they're doing out there. Who knows?
Yep. Exactly. Like, geocaching.
Geocaching.
Cool.
Probably.
So how's your week? I think you were part of a game jam. Is that right? That's what you sort of announced that last week that you were working on. Right?
Yeah. I was a part of the crew facilitating our in-person meetup for the Global Game Jam here in Minneapolis. Was hosted by 2DCon, so thank you to them. They let us use that space for free, which is extremely generous. And that was part of the IGDATC, the local volunteer group for International Games Developers Association of Twin Cities. So that was fun. I did not actually participate in the jam. I spent a lot of time just facilitating this time because the last time I did the LD, it was really hard for me to make it game and also facilitate.
Yeah, like sort of being an organizer and also participating in the jam.
Yeah, that's a little tough to do. But in my downtime, I built a little billiards game.
Ooh.
So I have a little 3D billiards game built in Excalibur. And those in the know, it's a 2D engine. So I'm simulating 3D using shaders. And I'm having a lot of fun with it.
That's cool.
I showed it to my daughter last night, and she was just like launching the cue ball all around. She was just going wild.
That'd be a great kids game. I mean, my kids love billiards in person. Like whenever there's a pool table, they'll just be doing that.
Yeah.
So I could see that being like a touch game. Kind of fun.
Yeah, it's using the built-in physics system in Excalibur, so
nice.
It's robust enough for billiards, so it's working really well.
That's cool.
And it looks cool.
That's neat.
I added some more after I posted on the Discord this morning. So it's looking like real nice, Clark. It's looking real nice.
Cool. Well, should we get into the news for the week?
Yeah, let's get into it. We have news for the week of January 26, 2026.
Yeah, and speaking of TypeScript 6.0, you spotted a PR to remove ES5, the target, which is something that we talked about in our What's Coming in TypeScript 6.7 episode with Jake Bailey. And Jake Bailey is the author of this PR.
Yeah. Jake Bailey's PR here removes the ES5 target, which is good because this actually allows the compiler to emit less code. So you have deployed code that's smaller and usually faster. Like if there's less code to parse, it's usually faster. And it's usually can be implemented in a browser more efficiently than whatever down-leveled like polyfill thing TypeScript had to do. And you're debugging code that looks similar to the code you wrote. So it preserves intent, which is good.
So as a reminder, this is already done in TypeScript 7.0 in TS-Go, the native version. This is to port that back to TS 6.0 because this is not just a deprecation, this is a removal of ES5, which means it's going to be deprecated in whatever the next 5.9, I think, whatever the next version of the 5.x line of TypeScript will be. Yeah, I think this is good and probably not like a huge change. Like I just recently upgraded my target to 2015 and I didn't have to make any changes at all to my code. And I have not noticed any runtime errors, because of that. So I think it's a pretty safe change and a nice modern one too.
Yeah, out of just random curiosity here, let me pull up what we're doing in Excalibur. Oh, we're doing 2018.
Cool.
So, yeah. And part of the reason is because of ancient Safari. And when you're making games, iOS is a big market share. So you want to make sure that you capture iOS.
Yeah. And it really just depends on how you have your bundler set up too. So I talked about using RSPack. It does have integration with Core.js, so as a polyfill library, and you can have it detect automatically. Like if you're using a certain API, it can add the polyfill for you. So you really just kind of have to play with it and try to figure out what are your browser targets first. That's where to start. Is like looking at your statistics, your analytics, and seeing what browsers do your users actually use. And then from there, you can then update your browsers list to be more specific and tailored to your app. And then from there, you can then do some research on what language versions might be a good target for you, and just kind of playing with it, I guess.
Yeah, there's not a one size fits all here. I think it's whatever your customers are using, and in education, and two, like we have to support these same iPads that the schools purchased 10,000 years ago because schools don't have any money.
Yep. But like as a modern web app, for my app, I don't need to worry too much about that, but I do need to worry about mobile devices because it's a responsive web app. So I do have to support, I think, something like Safari 15 or Safari 16 or something like that. When I was looking at my stats, it's like a non-zero percentage. All right.
Next on the list, we have Yarn 6. What?
Yep. And this is a preview release. This is not a 6.0 stable.
Yep.
But what is cool about 6.0? Tell me, Eric.
Well, they've rewritten it in Rust for performance.
In Rust.
Rust is making Rust is eating all of the developer tools.
Yep. So this I don't know if this is the very first package manager that's written in Rust, but it's one of the only ones, I think, because Deno, would technically probably be part of that, would be written in Rust, but that's part of the Deno ecosystem, whereas Yarn is like a standalone package manager. So this might be one of the only standalone package managers that's now written in Rust.
Now, in their blog post, they talk about like where the performance is right now in this preview. They say performance was a significant driver, and their initial focus has been on strict compatibility. So the idea here is that you're not, same with the TypeScript Go port, you don't want to have suddenly a change in behavior that's disruptive. And even with that constraint, they are seeing some really incredible performance results. So they have like Next.js. So before the port and after is 100 times faster. So they went from 4.1 seconds, 100 times faster, 100% faster. Excuse me. I can do that.
100 times. That'd be crazy.
100 times, 2.5 seconds. And then on a warm cache, it's even more impressive. It's down to 184 milliseconds. And then Gatsby, rest in peace, known for having lots of small dependencies, went from almost 2 seconds on a warm cache to less than a second, so 0.3 seconds. And then on a cold cache, they cut the time in half. So it was like 20 seconds down to 11.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And they do have more benchmarks too, if you want to see that. But we should probably talk about some of their new features, huh?
Yes. So one thing that is interesting here in this release is they're announcing Yarn Switch. So, which is also written in Rust. It's a binary that gets installed in your machine when you follow their new instructions. And when it gets executed, it'll read the package manager field from your project, transparently download it, cache, and forward the command. You can think of this as like Rust up or NVM, but specifically for Yarn. So this is just another thing that's going to be part and parcel. This is like a response to CorePack, which used to be part of NPM, a package manager that was experimental and shipped with Node official releases for a while, and then it's been yanked back out. Now, since Node has stopped distributing CorePack, Yarn had to invent their own thing, which there's some debate there. So we can maybe have a show on CorePack or not. It might be an interesting conversation about, why and why not. But anyway,
yeah,
this is kind of cool. So this is going to bring just a lot of ease for those folks that are using Yarn, and then they don't. Yeah, it'll just make things a lot better. They're also introducing lazy installs. So for a long time, Yarn has supported 0 installs, which is you check in the installed artifact basically, and then, you don't have to worry about pulling that down. Yarn can just reuse that installed artifact. Now with starting in Yarn 6x, they're introducing a new mode called lazy installs. So under this model, running most Yarn commands, including Yarn run, will prompt Yarn to silently install if it detects artifacts are out of sync with the package.json. So thanks to the Rust implementation, this is super fast on the happy path. So you can have the benefits of 0 installs without the repository bloat, which is pretty cool.
That's cool. The 0 installs was really nice if you had network restrictions, like during CI or CD, where you could just check in all your dependencies, do like an offline install, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of times what we wound up doing because of like all of the small files, we would zip up the node modules and then check that in. And then that would be stashed in the CI somewhere. Or we'd have it as part of like the CI. We'd like zip it up and then squirrel it away in like S3 or, on some local storage or something. And then unzip it and then reinstall from there. And that provided a pretty significant boost because you were starting from like, ideally that your main branch dependencies don't change very often. So that zip, you basically have a build cache ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know in the past we used npm shrink wrap, which would check in the tar balls of each of the packages. So not the extracted versions, but the actual compressed versions. So yeah, that was helpful. One thing that it says is that a Windows support is lacking right now. So that's on the roadmap. Interactive commands are yet to be implemented. And then they've got, some tests and missing commands and things that they need to wrap up. So they're looking for contributors, but otherwise they're going to be tackling that the next few weeks and months.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And next we have an interview with Anders on the GitHub YouTube channel. And it's 7 learnings from Anders, the architect behind C# and TypeScript.
Yeah, and each of us listened to each half of the episode. So do you want to talk about what sort of the beginning of the episode talks about?
Yeah, really, it's if you're interested in the history of Anders and also like C# and TypeScript, it really goes back. It's a real throwback to like the very beginning of like Anders' career, what he started doing, his philosophy on things, and then why C#, why TypeScript happened, and like all of the machinery that kind of prompted that, like internal teams being like, hey, Outlook.com, it's really hard to write this. So we built a tool. I think it was like a C# to JavaScript compiler, and it treated JavaScript as like the IL that C# would emit. And they're like, well, what if we just made JavaScript better? And then that was TypeScript.
Yep.
Eventually.
Did you know? I guess I did not know that Anders invented Turbo Pascal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Wild stuff.
Yeah.
He's been knocking out the hits for a long time.
Yeah. So then in the second half of the interview, he sort of talks about the future of TypeScript. I will say that there's really no like drama there or like radical transformation. And so what Anders said is like we kind of know where TypeScript is going to go. It's going to just follow and continue to evolve the ECMAScript specification because it's going to follow JavaScript. But what he did say is that he sees like a pretty radical transformation of the tooling, and he's not sure where that's going to go. And I think that this is something that we've remarked on for many, many episodes, and just covering it each week, we can kind of see the slow kind of evolution of all these dev tools to go to native speed, being rewritten in Rust, this like unified tooling ecosystem that's kind of emerging from Void Zero. And then he also talked about like integrating with MCP servers and language servers. So getting them to both talk to each other, which is kind of cool, because I think what's neat and what he says in the interview is like with MCP, you can do determinism in a box, right? So it is still interfacing with an LLM, but the MCP, you implement deterministically, like the tools in it and the prompts in it and things like that. So you have determinism within this box, right? But the box can talk to LLMs and can interpret LLMs and interface with them. So he's not sure where that's going to go, but that is kind of what he was talking about for like what he sees the future. Sort of that's where the transformation is going to be happening. And the other funny thing that he mentioned was like, people keep asking me, you got to design a language that's perfect for AI. And he said, well, the perfect language for AI would be the most horrible language for AI because it wouldn't be part of its training set. Mm-hmm. And since LLMs just regurgitate what they've been trained on, you would have a programming language that wouldn't have any prior art and wouldn't be part of its training set. So that's where new languages are at a disadvantage when it comes to AI tools. And I also think that that is going to be like, that's a really big gap, I think. And one of the risks with like leaning so much on these AI tools is it's going to create like this sameness of like same language, same tech stack. That's why it spits out TypeScript. That's why it's so good at JavaScript. And so our processes and workflows will like be made to fit what the LLM can do versus like something novel and new, which is a big risk. They didn't go too much into that. It was mostly focused on the optimistic side of things. But yeah, it was a good 30-minute interview. Always cool to hear from Anderson and learn from him.
Yeah, I recommend it. It was well edited, at least the part that I watched. It was very entertaining. I was entertained.
Yeah, it was very good. Okay, moving on to some meta framework news. Astro 5.17 came out. So at a high level, you can read the release notes. But they say Astro 5.17 introduces configurable dev toolbar placement, async file parsing, partitioned cookies, and new image optimization upgrades. So I don't want to go too much into detail, but if you're using Astro, you can go take a look. It looks like there's some cool stuff in it. If you are into 11T, which we've talked about a few times here, that's a static site generator, and they did a really nice 2025 in review blog post. This is really nice too, because if you don't like keep up with every single release, it can be kind of hard to like look back and be like, oh, what happened during the year? But just some highlights I'll mention from their blog post. They did some really big performance improvements. They improved their security footprint with like all the supply chain stuff. So they moved to a trusted publishing process. They also shipped a new interactive playground, which I think we're seeing to be a more common thing now for a lot of tools. And a kind of an interesting one, they said in August, this is Zach Leatherman, in August I found an old note from my late grandmother about the origins of the 11T name, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, some history there. So you can go check out what's new in 11T. It's always a really cool static site generator if you need something fast and simple and straightforward.
I reach for 11T first for a lot of things, including my own website is 11T.
We got a few PSAs.
Mm-hmm.
This is not necessarily a front-end thing, but I'm sure that plenty of people write their code in Notepad++.
Mm-hmm.
And you read more about this, but it got hacked.
Yeah. Should 100% update Notepad++. Older versions of Notepad++ did not do a great job of verifying updates. TLDR, Notepad++ was hijacked by state-sponsored hackers. What they wound up doing is they found a way to attack the update servers to redirect update traffic to malicious locations.
So I guess this is important. So maybe don't use the in-app updater.
No, I would go to the original, the website, and download a new version of Notepad++. I wouldn't use the built-in updater. I don't think they say that on here, but that sounds like a reasonable thing to do based on what they said in their blog post.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like that should be the first thing that they say.
Yeah, yep. At the end of the blog post, they say download version 8.9.1, which includes the relevant security enhancement and running the installer to update your Notepad++ manually. So I guess they do say that.
Okay.
They maybe should have said that at the front. But yeah, if you're curious, they go into excruciating detail in a couple of blog posts about what happened and how it happened, and what happened, what were the mitigations. So if you want the details, check it out. But yeah, definitely update your Notepad++.
Yes. Okay. There's another PSA. You probably already remember that React Server Components had a pretty major security issue with denial of service and source code exposure. That was back in December. We covered that. Why are we covering it again? Well, it looks like those patches were not complete. So they found additional vulnerabilities related to that. So this was updated January 26th. So this past week. And there are new vulnerabilities, and the new ones don't allow for remote code execution, so it's not React to shell, so that still remains effective, but these are denial of service and source code exposure vulnerabilities. So, of course, make sure that you update. If you already updated for the previous vulnerabilities, you're going to need to update again. So it says here, if you updated to 19.0.3, 19.1.4 and 19.2.3, these are incomplete and you will need to update again. So that affects React Server DOM Webpack, React Server DOM Parcel, and React Server DOM TurboPack, and also affects Next, React Router, Waku, Parcel RSC, VEAP RSC plugin, and RW SDK. So yeah, so just go check out the blog post. It has all the details. But if you are using React Server Components anywhere in your stack, make sure you go update.
Yep. And this is a good reminder too, that you also do not want to check in secrets into source code, even if you're sure that they're going to run on the server. So source code exposure is a real bummer. And you don't want secrets in there.
No, and sometimes it can happen accidentally. Like if you accidentally check in a .env file that wasn't supposed to be checked in. If it's not part of your git ignore.
That's right.
So just be careful about that. And there are tools too that can do secret scanning for you. So you can look into that too.
Yeah, I think I remember Trufflehog is one of them.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we've got some library watches. The one that I saw, which is kind of cool. If you're like me and you have ancient CSS knowledge, you are probably doing things in modern day CSS you don't need to do anymore. So if everybody kind of remembers like the box sizing hack or like IE6 hacks and stuff that you had to do, you don't need to do those anymore. Well, box sizing you still might want to do because it's useful, but there's a tool called ReliCSS or ReliCSS. It's a tool for front-end archaeology. That's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's cool because you can copy and paste your CSS rules, and it will tell you, do you still need to do this anymore? And then what to do if you don't. So like if you're using post CSS or auto prefixer, you don't need to do prefixed CSS anymore because those tools will take care of it. If you have an old school hack, you probably don't need to do that anymore. It will tell you about that. And it's built to be offline. So you don't have to worry about source code exposure, like uploading the company source code to a remote server. It all works in your browser. It was designed for contractors and consultants and people who are working on other people's code bases. So you can copy and paste your CSS, put it in, and you can see, is there stuff that you shouldn't be doing anymore, which is pretty cool. So I thought that was a neat library.
Awesome. Next, I have another library watch, Clack 1.0, from the coolest domain I've ever seen, Bombshell. It's bomb.sh on Blue Sky and on the web. But they just dropped Clack 1.0. And this is a library for building stylish, interactive prompts for JavaScript CLIs. So if you would like to build a CLI, this might be something to check out. In the 1.0, they dropped the CommonJS distribution. They added autocomplete and task log, localization, a bunch of performance fixes, and they say ecosystem alignment. So they have a blog post that goes into the nitty and gritty. But this is exciting because I have need to do CLI stuff in my day-to-day. So I might be looking at this.
One thing I'll just complain about quickly is that I wish that the .NET ecosystem had better shell libraries and tools like this, because they don't.
Mm-hmm.
You usually got to roll it yourself for a lot of this stuff. It'd be great if we had these types of CLI libraries for .NET.
For sure. Next up, this one's not released yet, but I am excited about it. A Blue Sky user, I believe it's pronounced Shy-Dev, they're building a complete D20 engine in TypeScript following the D&D rulebook 5.2.1. So it has full combat rules, character progression, 300 plus spells. It's data-driven. And they have a really cool animation of what it's gonna look like. And I want it. I want this so bad. I want it to be released. Shy-Dev, send me a link. I want to play with this. So it's not released yet, but launching v0.1 soon.
So is this like a big schema document for D&D the rule set, or is it a rule engine?
It looks like a rule engine. Like you could do a game, but I don't know.
That's cool. And I guess because if it's written in JavaScript and if it's just a library, you could work with Excalibur.js and then you'd have your D&D rule engine.
Yeah. Time to do your own Baldur's Gate.
There you go. I'd be down for that. That is on my bucket list. That's one of my bucket list items is I would like to create some kind of RPG at some point in the future. So
yeah.
one day I would like to create an RPG.
I've made a turn-based combat system.
There you go. Yep.
That was on my bucket list.
I need the turn-based combat. I need the dialogue system. And now I need the rule engine. You get all those three things, I can make my RPG. I've already got the asset pack. That's all set.
Yes. All right. Moving on to some community highlights. The first one I want to share is a WebDev Simplified video where they go into the satisfies keyword. So if you've been sleeping on the satisfies keyword, you need to wake up and take a look at it.
It is my new favorite keyword, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. It's type narrowing without some of the pain of type narrowing. So it increases your safety. They have 3 examples in this video. When you want to pass option bags around safely, you can do hey, I've separated my options, const options, yada, 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 anonymous objects satisfies my options bag type. You can narrow types on anonymous objects, but keep the specifics, which is super nice. So it's like using as const, but not as const. So you can narrow without losing the specifics, which is kind of nice. So it's kind of like as const plus plus. It's also useful if you do satisfies never. You can use that in your switch case statements to do that exhaustive check in the default branch. So if you ever hit the default branch where it's an error, you can do satisfies never, and then you'll have a TypeScript error at build time.
Yep.
Super cool.
Yeah, I would say if you find yourself reaching for as any, as unknown, as blank, you probably want to go see if you can switch that to a satisfies. All right, so the next thing I saw on Blue Sky is from Savannah.dev. They work on the CPython library, and specifically, she has a blog post that goes into why I created a server farm in my closet, and you can too, to do JIT performance benchmarking. So the idea here was how good is CPython's JIT performance, and can we try that? Can we measure that on consumer-grade hardware? And so she has 4 devices that she has now put in her closet, from a Raspberry Pi to a MacBook to a Intel laptop or something, and then a desktop AMD Ryzen. And she has it running benchmarks and reporting now inside their pipelines, and it's all just running in her closet. So she goes into some detail on how she set that up and what that's for. But if you go to does JIT, J-I-T, go Brrr, BRRR.com, you can see the CPython dashboard.
Nice.
Yep. Up next, I also saw on Blue Sky a technical steering committee member from Node.js, Joyee Cheung. She has a blog post on improving single executable application, or SEA, building for Node.js. And I think this comes in a talk form as well. I know that she's given multiple talks on this, but this is a blog post that dives deeper into the fact that you can now create single application bundles with Node.js, meaning that you can take your Node.js app and you can put it into an exe file, basically, for at least on Windows, and then, an equivalent Linux and Mac OS executable binary. So basically building binaries with Node.js. So she goes into some detail on how they've been able to improve that in later versions of Node.js.
Awesome. Next up, I have Node is getting a virtual file system. And this came via Joshua Goldberg, friend of the show. We have a PR here that is currently open against Node main from M. Kalina implementing a virtual file system. And you'd be like, oh, okay, why do I care about a virtual file system? Well, you should care because this allows you to have files in memory instead of on disk. So you can get significant speed ups. For example, if you want to just work against a virtual file system and your abstraction works against files, you can do that. If you don't need the actual file system, you can test easily because now you don't need to have complicated mocks to hit the file system or to mock the file system when you're doing testing of whatever you're doing that needs to touch files. This is super slick. This is very exciting. So you can do lots of cool things with virtual file systems. And in Linux, did you know everything is a file? Yeah, very exciting. It's exciting stuff. This is huge. Like, this is going to be so cool for doing things quickly and doing things like, for example, if you need like a scratch space, for example, like in your program, instead of writing to the actual disk, you can write it to a virtual file system.
Yeah, that's cool.
Next up on community highlights, Deno announced a work in progress experimental Windows ARM build. So if you are one of the 5 people doing Windows ARM, you now can run Deno.
Yeah, this is ARM ARM. So this is the processor architecture, not Intel, not Apple Silicon. Well, so Apple Silicon is ARM, but that's for Mac OS.
Mm-hmm.
But this is for Windows. If I used to have a Microsoft Surface tablet, like the really early one, and that was ARM architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in theory, the benefits of ARM are low power and maybe performance.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think for Windows, a lot of programs go through like a Rosetta-like translation layer.
Yeah.
So I don't think the performance has been fully realized.
Yep. Yeah, that's a bit advanced there, but that's kind of cool.
Next up, another one from Josh, but the Mocha testing framework has a new Astro front end. So go check that out.
Nice. Everybody's building their doc sites and stuff with Astro. It's pretty cool.
I might make a prediction here. I think Astro might be the next in the meta for front end.
Oh, they're working with Cloudflare now.
Yeah. So go check that out at Mocha.js.org. Speaking of Astro, have you heard of Mastro?
And if you haven't, you will soon. Hint,
you will soon. Hint. But they have a great blog post talking about how everything is a route in Mastro. One interface for servers, static sites, and assets.
Yeah.
And it stands for minimal Astro.
That's right. Well, I don't want to leave people hanging. We said hint because we spoke to the creator of Mastro and we did an interview, and that will be coming out soon. So stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned. And next, Cinnabon is doing more cool things on Blue Sky. They're pining for const-known TemplateStringArray, and then they were experimenting with the TypeScript compiler and got it to work. So there's an interesting thread here where they're patching the TypeScript compiler with Deno, using Deno in addition to the TypeScript compiler to play around with this potential new feature. And then my favorite thing on this thread was, please PR.
So you got to explain to me what is the significance of this? What does this do?
Right. So right now, when you do template strings, you can't get the bits out of the template string and have them be const-known.
So would this be like the substitution placeholders, like those values or what those types are? So like if I have a template string, with backticks, and then I put like some constants in there, like maybe I have a number constant and a string constant, and I put them in different positions. Are you saying that I can't get those positionals back out with the right types?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, you can't.
Yeah.
But with this, you can. So they showed like a template string, hello, replacement, world, replacement, and then they got the type back out of it, which was the hello world and empty string of all of the constant string bits in there that are known at constant time.
Nice.
So you can get those types back out.
That is
which
neat.
is super useful
for
please.
Some niche use cases.
For things And yeah, I don't know. It's useful.
Yeah, I bet it would be useful for things like archetype that use a lot of string templating.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, if you are a game dev or aspiring game dev on the web, the Gamedev.js survey results are in. This is a lot like the Stack Overflow survey, but for the state of web game dev in 2025. So go check that out. Excalibur made the list this year.
Yeah, we made the list.
We made the list. We're almost 2% of the people that responded.
That's
which
pretty awesome, actually.
I thought was cool.
Yeah, that is a more percent than I would have thought, I guess, initially. That's cool.
Yeah, almost 2%. I'll take it.
Yep. So now this is a nice little measuring stick. So each year you can see does the percentage increase? If it does, growth is working.
Growth is happening. Yeah, this is especially if you're looking. Actually, we're almost 3%. I didn't give myself enough credit. I opened it up. I remember a 2 in there, but we're 2.9.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's even better.
Cool. That is cool.
But if you're looking to do game dev or you want to dabble in game dev, this might be a good thing to take a look at and see like what people are doing out there in the industry.
Yep. Just as an aside, when I did my 6 to 12 months of consulting for developer education, one of the things that companies kept saying is like, we want to increase adoption. We want to increase developer adoption. But then I'd ask them like, well, how are you measuring that? Well, we don't know. Social mentions, like number of downloads for our stuff. And I'm like, that's not really a way to measure adoption. The only way to measure adoption is like, what percentage of the market do you own? Like, what is your market share basically?
Mm.
And so this type of stuff, just like picking a canonical survey in your niche, could be Stack Overflow survey, which we did for one of my clients. And then like for Excalibur, the Gamedev.js survey is like, that would be the canonical source. And then you just track that each year. If that number goes up, adoption is going up. So it's kind of like you got to pick like the proxy that you want to use as the signal for what you want to measure. But anyway, that's just a little tip there, marketing tip for you.
Yeah.
Cool. We do have a funny Bleet of the week. This was from Bailey Townsend on Blue Sky. They said, for TypeScript being called TypeScript, you don't really use the types much, do you? And someone replied, well, depends on how unhinged you are.
That's pretty funny.
That was funny. Yep. That was a good one. It is sort of ironic, though, because depending on what side of the spectrum you're on, are you a explicit typing fan or are you implicit typing fan? If you're doing a lot of implicit typing, that's true. Like you don't use types as much. Like you put them at the boundaries, like to define your interfaces. If you're an explicit typing fan, then you probably do use quite a bit of types. But I'm definitely more on the implicit side. Type the boundaries, type the contracts, and sort of let the types flow otherwise. But yeah, that's funny. So I suppose the joke here is that if you are an explicit typer, then maybe you're pretty unhinged.
Yeah. I think the time to use explicit types is if you're writing library code.
Yeah.
Because that keeps you from accidentally making a breaking change.
Yep. We've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think that we still haven't done like a really technical deep dive discussion about this, but we definitely have covered this before because there have been discussions on Reddit on like what side do you fall on. So we've chimed in with our thoughts on that. I think like basically where we land is if you're a library code developer, you probably care about types a lot more than like an application code developer. So
yeah, I think in like 99% of use cases, you probably want to lean on inference instead. So like if you're writing application code, odds are you should be relying on inference unless there's a good reason not to.
Yep. And I mean, you can be an application developer and a library developer at the same time in the same application, like it depends on context. If you're writing reusable packages, reusable tools, things like that, you're going to care about typing more. I also care a lot about typing at the boundaries between, the seams of your application where data transitions from like where you serialize data. So API types and fetch typings and things like that, where you're getting types back from the server like that, that matters a lot.
For sure.
Cool. Well, do you have any cool links to share?
I have two.
Cool.
And I'll put these on the show notes, but there's one from YouTube channel NESHacker where they talk about how Metroid's 8-bit gravity works. And they talk about how realistic it might be and maybe some possible planets in our universe that might be the home of the planet setting in Metroid. And the name of the planet that it's set on is escaping me for this. The fictional planet that it's set on is escaping me at the moment. But it's a really cool video about doing like how platformers mess with gravity in order to make it a fun game.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then the other thing that I've been watching is a lot of like Lego videos, because it makes me happy. But there's a channel called Creative Mindstorms, and they made a pixel art printing robot where it takes one by one tiles and presses them into a Lego plate to print out a picture in Lego, which I thought was super cool.
That is neat. Love the Lego stuff.
Yeah.
My son he's got a bunch of books on doing like World War II builds with Lego. He loves that stuff. So he's trying to build a Jeep right now, I think. And then he's also trying to build a larger kind of airplane. I forget which model. He knows the exact model of airplane it is. I don't, but yeah, he's pretty funny. He's done like tanks before too, which is pretty cool.
That's a preteen special interest for sure.
Yeah. Yep, I was in that phase as well. I remember that. So my two links are, once again, we are asking for your help as Minnesota in general. Actually, if you're a gamer, this one's pretty cool. Giantbomb and MinnMax, which is a podcast based here in Minnesota. And I guess I'm not quite sure. Maybe Giantbomb is also based in Minnesota. I don't know that for sure, though. But anyway, they are joining forces, and they have a fundraiser for VEAP, which is VEAP. It's the assistance program that actually we've gone through before too. They help families, and in this case, it's for mutual aid. So rent assistance is like the big one right now. And so they are already funded past their goal. They're at like $275K, but it's still going on, and so they want to try to beat their record. So yeah, if you've got some extra funds you're willing to put towards the fundraiser and you're a gamer, this goes to a good cause.
Yeah, and I know we called out last episode that you should call your leaders. You should call your leaders again, because guess what? They haven't let up. It's still real bad here, even though there's been some lip service paid to a change in whatever.
Yeah.
It's still real bad here.
Yeah, they
haven't changed their tact at all.
This past weekend in Powderhorn Park, you can go read it on the news, but they were using tear gas against protesters again, and I think they arrested an observer as well. So, yeah, no good. I think for those of us that are kind of on the outskirts of Minneapolis and the metro area, we don't see it like every single day. Like you can be driving on the highway and doing your daily activities, and you might not see the stuff that's going on. But if you are in any kind of service industry, like you're working in restaurants or hotels or even like schools, especially, you are dealing with this every single day. Like parents are watching bus routes and bus stops to protect kids, and schools are, watching their perimeter and having people observe and making sure that ICE is not staging on their property, which they tend to do. So it's still not great. Otherwise, the other cool link I'll mention is more like a cool video series back in, I don't even remember when this came out, in the mid-2000s, Planet Earth from the BBC with Sir David Attenborough and his beautiful narrative voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend the series. We found it on HBO, so they have Planet Earth 1, 2, and 3. Which I didn't even know there was a 2 and 3. So we've been watching that with the kids. So that's kind of been our family viewing time, which has been fun.
I have a memory of Planet Earth about the saguaro cactuses, the cacti, and how they absorb water and like how they expand and contract. And I have that burned into my brain for some reason. Yeah, I just hear David Attenborough right now.
We saw them in person. We wanted to make sure that we went to go see the saguaros, before they go extinct, I guess, in the next decade or more. So highly recommend going to Tucson, Arizona, which is where we went to go see them, and Saguaro National Park.
They are amazing plants. They're
super cool.
I used to live in Arizona, and they're really quite cool. In fact, it is a crime to mess with them.
Yes. Yep. Well, it's time for our Minnesota long goodbye.
Yeah. Don't mess with a cactus.
Don't mess with cactuses.
Don't mess with a cactus.
Well, I think we are seeing more evidence, too, of this Rust taking over the tooling ecosystem with Yarn being rewritten in Rust.
Yeah, I think the core problem that's being solved is the speed of tooling.
Yeah.
I think that's a big aspect where we just need faster tools, especially for the code bases that we're working on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, what's driving that need for performance? Like, why aren't we just happy with what we have? And it's because we are building more bigger things with JavaScript and TypeScript. And so these big apps, like, they'll take a long time to compile and to like bundle. And so that is the direct sort of impact to your local development feedback loop. And even above local development, like your team's speed, like your team agility is dependent on how fast your PRs run and things like that, right? So having really good tooling to make that faster is beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, we switched to VEAP and we went from more than a minute to build, like more than a minute to build Excalibur and run the tests. Like, I think it took like 6-7 minutes. 6-7. And to like less than a minute. Like, I think we can build the core repo in a couple of seconds. And then the tests still take a little bit. But we split the tests also into like headless and headful tests where we need to draw.
Yes. And it's funny too, because I had mentioned that I refactored my test suite for my app, which is .NET. And I was able to do like test parallelization, and I could get it up to 2 minutes. Like, it would complete all 800 tests in about 2 minutes. Before, I used to take 13 minutes locally on my local machine. Unfortunately, that has not translated to GitHub Actions. And you know why? It's because it's dependent on the number of cores that the machine has.
Yeah.
And the default runners for GitHub Actions, I think, like maybe have 2 to 4 cores, whereas my local machine has like 16, right? So you can get their large runners, but they cost more. And plus, this is Windows right now. The tests have to run on Windows. Well, that ain't good.
I have an idea for you. You could maybe do a locally hosted runner. And it's actually not hard to set up. I did it the other day.
Yeah.
And you could certainly do that. It requires you to have a machine that GitHub can talk to.
It's possible. Not sure about that. I kind of, I like to try to keep things simple, and I don't necessarily want stuff on my local network that I have to deal with. But it's a good idea. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's about it, I feel like.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end it. As we're looking at speed, we're looking at minimalism. Yeah. Use satisfies.
That's right.
And satisfies will satisfy.
It's a good keyword. All right. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at kamronigus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.